You're ready to go. All right.
We will call this meeting to order. We have Robert and Dana virtually and everyone else is present. The public notice for Wisconsin statutes. Notice that the special meeting was posted on Tuesday, October 29th, 2024 per Culture District Administrator. I would like a motion indicate resolved notice being legally posted.
So moved.
Second,
All
in favor?
Aye.
I saw an aye by Dana. Robert, do you have an aye?
Yes, aye.
Excellent. Mission statement: Viroqua schools will nurture excellence, unlock potential, and ignite passion. Certify the 24-25 tax levy.
All right. So do you want to pull up your screen? That would be great. And we can kind of talk through. We met, was it just last week with the budget and finance committee?
The week before.
Wait,
2 weeks
before.
ago.
2 weeks ago.
And we're seeking some guidance as Chris was going on vacation, and how do we want to make this work with the equalized value that we saw. And so a couple of big things, and I'm gonna let Chris kind of explain through. But that after that meeting, it was decided that we were going to try to be intentional to pay down the debt at the ELC, if at all possible, while not raising mill rate at all. So it was, kind of those were the parameters and the stated goal out of that meeting. And so, Chris, I'll kind of let you, kind of take over first and explain what this recommendation is versus what was approved at the annual meeting.
Sure. So I'll start from the top, working in the 24-25 side. We did see an increase in that general fund levy that's dictated by our revenue limit this is about a $200,000 increase there over what we had approved at the annual meeting, largely from vouchers being higher and a reduction in our aid from what we were working with from the January one. So little bit of an increase there. The other two areas, Fund 39 and Fund 80 are the other two areas that we can then levy for. So that referendum debt service fund is in Fund 39. We had been budgeting a number there of 1.563 million, and we've reduced that to this 1.067 million. I'll kind of get into the why behind that here in just a second, because it does tie into what we're looking to do on the community service fund side of it as well. So within that community service fund, Fund 80 number, we had been budgeting 600,000, and we're proposing moving that to 1.2 million. Reason being is that in doing that, it would allow us to be able to pay off the debt on the ELC
Completely.
all of it. So that's a $600,000 increase over what we had budgeted before. The difference here is about, it's about $500,000. So essentially, this total school levy amount is going to be an increase. It's about 103,000. It actually over what we had, originally budgeted. When you throw in that change in the general fund side of things, was about, about 525,000. The difference, the increase there would be the amount of the vouchers. So in sort of accounting for that, making that reduction on the debt service side of things, levying everything the amount that we need to be able to pay off the debt on the ELC and the community service fund resulted in a total levy increase of 9.88%. I guess to speak to the Fund 39 side of things, we have money in that fund to be able to cover this and still have some money left. So we're that's what, we're still making our full payment on our debt and all those kind of things. We're just levying less, reducing that fund balance. And that then allows us to be able to have a 24-cent decrease in our mill rate, and still be able to move forward with the paying off the ELC debt. We estimate the interest savings in doing that of about $75,000.
So yeah, we're gonna save about $75,000 if we do it this way, paying off that debt early. And essentially, trying to hold all numbers essentially the same. So the biggest changes are two things, like we said, we got a little less aid, which means that, to reach our revenue limit, the local taxpayers pick up a little bit more, which is why it's 4.7, which is 4.5, which is what we were budgeting for, and then $100,000 increase over what we anticipated in our vouchers creates that gap in what was approved during our annual meeting. And so then holding those two things, all things considered after that, we went, all right, what can we do to get that ELC debt eliminated, in one fell swoop? And that's what we lowered, why we lowered the total debt service fund levy, the Fund 39 for referendum debt, to what it is. So we were trying to find balance in that. It is a 9.88% increase. As you can see, a little lower, approximately 125,000 will be a school levy tax credit, which is what the state writes back to our local taxpayers for the voucher payments. Really glad that out of $950,000 they're covering 125,000. It's really nice of them. But that will lower our percentage increase to 7.9%. And when you look at this as even just an inflationary increase, from the year prior, we had an 8% increase in our CPI. We're under even that for, kind of moving forward and recouping from what we had in as far as expenses. So I think overall it's a really solid plan. We haven't done something like this before, but we've also not had this opportunity to do that with the interest that we've earned on the referendum debt, and with what we've with what we've been able to lay out. But I really like the idea of being done with everything within that, and that allows our Fund 80 to drop drastically in the years following this. Drastically. And I like the idea of saving $75,000 in the long.
Are there any questions? Robert or Dana? Dana's no. Robert?
This is figuring our, equalized value the same as last year, or are we putting a 10, 14, 16% increase on that?
I think you said, Robert, just because we're having a little trouble hearing you, was this
It's raining
figuring,
really hard here.
was
all
this
of a sudden.
figuring the 0% increase in equalized value? No, so at the annual meeting, what was approved was a mill rate of $7.70. And so with the equalized value increase, that drops the mill rate down to $7.10 is what we're presenting now, because we know that equalized value went up to 13.5%. So instead of the 770 mill rate, it's now 710, but you and I both know that mill rate number is volatile just for that reason.
Correct.
Yep.
Once again, it seems like the town's got a bigger increase than the city of Viroqua, so I imagine I'll have some farmers talking with me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just send them to Chris.
It'll be hit. You can send them to Chris. It'll be a lot better than last year, Robert, because at least the city was playing the same game this year versus last year when they weren't, right? So at least, the increases are not offset by that weird decrease at the city, which I still do not understand. And they definitely corrected this year.
So could you go through, I don't know, Chris, maybe, and explain the vouchers, the dollars we get per pupil and the dollars we send out? and how that it affects our budget? I think we lose money, don't we?
Yeah, we gain nothing. So
Right.
we get $0. And all it does is they give us the opportunity to tax our community up to the amount that it costs. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So in no way do we have the capacity with where our budget is at to eat any of that, right? We do not have that. We did for the first 2 years with Mike and I. We did, which was 50,000 and maybe like 70 or 80,000 that second year. $950,000 is not something we can eat within our budget. But what's really interesting is when you look at that mill rate of 710, about $1 of it is going to the voucher. Now they are supplementing that with $125,000 that is spread out through all taxpayers within our district. And so thank goodness, they're giving us that 12% of
That
that.
equates to roughly what the increase was year over year.
Yep.
Voucher side of things.
Yep. So essentially, they kept that, they did eat the increase, if we look at it that way. But that keeps our overall impact at that 7.9%. Again, that's not a perfect equation because we don't get to see what, the tax credit goes back on, on Angie's bill versus my bill, right? That's not an equation we are privy to. So we can't say with all certainty, here's what your bill is going to be. But we know that the estimate that we're going to get back as a community is 125,000. So Robert, we get nothing for them, nor do we lose anything either. But our local tax, what it looks like is that our local taxes at the school are going up by X dollars. This year was $125,000.
So what I would recommend to everyone, if you do get questions, I mean, obviously you can send them to Chris or Tom, but actually, reaching out to their legislators and having them explain why Viroqua School District is getting a bill for $950,000 for the voucher system. I mean, that's the real question that I would love that answer to. And what is that costing our state, as well as what is the accountability of that system? And I think that goes a long way.
Yes, that dollar associated with how many kids?
And how many kids is that?
Yeah, so that's that'll be in the mid-80s with that number, mid-80s. Yep. So again, the biggest thing with that is for us is a transparency piece. Why in the world would it say Viroqua area schools tax bills going up? And then they supplement it on the back end, with this tax credit. So we look like the bad guy, even though we're not. And they look like the heroes, even though they're not, right? And so this is a piece where it's absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion. I'll tell you my opinion. That is, it looks like we're increasing by that much every year when we're not.
The other thing would be to ask our legislators to explain to our district, the people who own property, what that is costing them individually for 80 students in our district when we're serving, 11 to 1,200 students in our budget. And we have a building and we're serving every student that attends. And I am very upset about this increase in voucher spending in our state personally.
It would be interesting, just like a referendum costs are put at the bottom of the tax bill, that would be put at the bottom of the tax bill.
Yep,
Yes.
right. And when we did our initial calculations, even with the debt at the ELC, so you're looking at operating costs, which we are operating at a loss, which we've been very open about. And we expect that to be 3 to 5 years before that kind of evens out. We're never going to make money on our community. The debt on the ELC and the operating costs for the pool are all under, like if you combine all three of those, are under what our impact is on our vouchers in our district. Which is pretty incredible when you think about, the flack we get for some of those community services sometimes. But it's like, my goodness, again, 710 is what we're recommending for a mill rate. That would be around 610. If the vouchers were not included in that. And that's crazy to me. It's saying 1 out of every $7 is going, that is on our bill. Again, that looks like that's what we're charging, is going, it's not money we ever see. It's not like a piece where, we're accountable to this, or we see where these students are going, or we see where these students are from. They say they live in our community and that money goes elsewhere.
It's crazy.
It's just crazy. I'll tell you how I really feel later.
Any other questions?
On our community service, how much are we budgeting for the pool and also for the ELC? Has a loss?
Yep.
Yep, the pool is about 140,000. And the ELC is, it was like, I think it was like 190,
It was under
it
200,000.
was like it was like 195, I
I
think.
think it was 195.
Yeah,
And then the rest of that was, of the 600,000 was to make up for the debt, our debt payments.
Yep.
And that's why we've, essentially, we're still, again, like Chris said, making all the payments. We're using some of that interest that we've earned that, historically, what we would have used is to pay down the referendum debt first. We're just now using that in a different way to get the ELC off the books. And then we can focus on that, on paying down that debt, as quickly as we possibly can, to lose, to save on our interest. So, yep.
Interest costs for the building project versus interest costs for the ELC in terms of percentage.
Yeah, percentage, the building cost is still gonna be more percentage wise, but those are not callable. Those are not things that we can actually pay off early yet. So what happens is that sits in that account and, it sits in that account, it earns interest. So yes, we're gonna have a little bit of loss on that interest in that account. But again, we're free of that ELC debt, which I do think, as we talked about in the committee meeting, was the priority, was to get ourselves out of that. And now it's just an operating cost for the ELC out of Fund 80, allowing us to lower our Fund 80.
and that interest, the difference in the interest rates aren't drastic.
Yeah.
By any means. They're very close to each other.
Yep.
I
Do you
I
know-
forgot about that callable portion. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. No.
I know a Schwab account interest right now is about 4.69% that you're accruing in interest, which is higher stereotypically than what you would get elsewhere. Do you know what kind of interest we are earning on?
It's right around there.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay,
I think it's maybe slightly lower than that.
Yeah.
okay.
It was between 4 and 4.5 the last few times I looked.
The reason I ask, I don't know if school districts are permitted to put money in a Schwab account that's interest bearing that you can
I
move
don't know
around.
I don't know if Schwab specifically, but we can invest it in
Yes.
certain legal ways. However, as we found out multiple times in the last year, we can't make so much. It's all capped. And so for like a referendum project, for example, we get to keep roughly $1.1 million in interest earned. I want to say it was at 1.8 the last time that we've actually earned 1.8 million in interest. 700,000 of that has to go to Uncle Sam
Right.
because they did so much, for that. But anyway,
That's another topic.
please tell me how that one works out too. So yeah, I believe that was it was roughly around there the last time I checked.
Yeah.
And again, so we can earn interest on that money, but it's not in the same way. Yeah.
Okay. So this wouldn't be an investment. This is strictly interest that you get that you can withdraw and add to as you please.
This, we only can use it on debt.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not like something we can make money on and put it back in our Fund 10. We can't
Okay,
do that.
you
We
can't do
can
that.
use it, we could have used it to expand on our project that the community supported. So that's a common piece where you use, and we may, depending on where the numbers go, you know, if we have a furniture purchase later or a piece of equipment we didn't think of, you know, once we get into the spaces, we may need to do a little bit, you know, dip into that interest a little bit for the project, but we can't do, we have to use it on debt.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Did Uncle Sam send you a thank you note for $700,000?
No, they didn't, and I'm waiting for that. I'll keep waiting.
Yeah, you will, you will. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
I'll quit asking questions
No,
now.
it's all good. These are great questions.
Anybody else have any questions?
Make a motion to certify the 2024 tax levy.
Second,
Second.
any other discussion? We don't need a individual vote on this, so all in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next topic is the 24-25 budget.
Just gonna pull that up.
All right, I'll work through this here real quick. Probably, I guess, some of the more important math to do at the top of this, is, and we're working from this, I mean, it's a little bit bigger.
It's really coming down out there right now.
It's loud over here.
So working through, so column C here, this is our unaudited actual financials from year end 24. And then our budgeted side here in column D. Line 9 here kind of shows our ending fund balance. This is in Fund 10. And it does show a deficit of about $355,000, which what had been approved at the annual meeting was $350,000. So it came right in around there. The bulk of the changes in Fund 10 are going to be associated with property tax piece, which was we discussed with the levy setting, a decrease from what we had budgeted for in our open enrollment in, which is the $794,000. Our state aid came in about $160,000 less than what the July 1 estimate was. So that's this $8.691 million number. And then did make a couple little changes within our other revenue side of things for some grant funding. And then sorry. Other than that, not a whole lot of changes there. I'll kind of briefly go through some of the budgetary changes in a little bit more detail in a moment here, but budgeting total revenues is 16.876 million in Fund 10. Expenditures did see some increases there of about, I think, a grand total of around $200,000 or so, correctly. And that's really just some changes within the salaries, benefits, and then also our voucher number, and then our open out. Interestingly enough, we had about 100. The increase in the vouchers was offset by a decrease in what we had originally budgeted for the open enrollment. Now, the difference between the two numbers was $4,000.
A wash, pretty much.
Yeah. Going into in relatively normal activity within our activity accounts, which is Fund 21. And no changes there. Fund 27, just one minor change within our, it's like $107 within salaries and benefits there. As a reminder that our Fund 27 can't carry balance year to year. Our cost to our general fund is this $1.7 million number, which is the transfer that we will need to make to ensure that this number comes to zero. So that's essentially our general funds cost for our special education.
Which we will again be advocating for an increase to 60% for special ed. They raised it from 31% to 33% last 2 years ago. So, but that really does affect everything, because if the reimbursement or the reimbursement goes up, that allows us to do is use that money that we would have transferred in Fund 10. It affects every student within our district, and I think that's a confusing point for some of our lawmakers. It's like, well, why would we just give more? Why would we, why would we spread this out? Or no, every dollar they give us more for special ed is a dollar we can use somewhere else.
So then no major changes there other than the little bits of salary benefits or total expenditures of 2.878 billion there. So some changes here in our debt service fund 38 and 39. We increased our payment on our other long-term debt, GO debt. That's that $600,000 increase that we go out of Fund 80 into this to make the payment on our ELC debt and then payment. Our long-term capital debt, that's the regular payment that we're required to make. We're levying less there. And that's essentially the reason why you see the decrease in the ending fund balance there. But it does show we still have about $900,000 end of the year in that, in our fund there. So capital projects fund, this is really just off of draw schedules and whatnot in terms of making the payments on the capital project. So we'll expend the bulk of that money here this next year. And you can see this $1.2 million figure there. That's actually that interest. Bulk of that's that interest that we on our investments. So this eventually will just get exhausted. Is how that food service fund, only changes here from the annual meeting are really just related to salaries and benefits. Small adjustment, which we'll go over here in just a minute. The changes in the community service fund side of things, fund balance itself doesn't change from the annual meeting, but there's a $600,000 increase in the revenues, which is from the community service fund levy, and then a $600,000 increase in the non-program transactions, which is where our payment we get moved to 38 and payment made out of there to eliminate the ELC debt. Funds 91, 93, 99. Divides in that too, as our co-op funds. This also needs to even out to zero. I think there was $100 change that was needed in that fund to kind of balance things out there. So that's the budget. I can go through the kind of little bit more detail line by line changes here. First part of it here is our general fund. So Fund 10, just see Fund 10 explain change that. You can see the change in the property taxes. The about half of that is voucher amount. The change in the voucher amount, I should say, from the annual meeting to our original budget here. And then some change, then a lot of the rest of it's really related to these pieces are salaries and benefits. And then, or I guess the aid difference, sorry, salaries, it's all down here. Payment for services, so that's the change in our open enrollment in state aid, small minor change, and then the increase on the grant side of things, $135,000. The bulk of all of this down here is, as I said, salary benefit related fund transfer change into our fund 27. The bulk of that, this $4,000 difference there is this, like I had explained before, the voucher and open offers, and those changes. Fund 27 you can see is really just this 107,000 on the revenue side, and on the expense side as well, but that's just due to the changes in the final kind of salary benefit budget calculations. 38 and 39 you can see this was that change in basically the increase in the total that will be running through those funds to pay down. The 600,000 here is that fund 38 ELC piece. $20,000 difference for salaries and benefits on the fund 50 side. Fund 80, this is where that $600,000 difference comes in from the levy, and then also the payment on the ELC debt. And then small change on the cooperative side. There's some additional kind of broken out just a little bit further figures that follow. If anybody has any questions or would like to see any of those changes in a little bit more detail, just point me toward what you'd like to see and we can cover that. Otherwise, we'll just kind of spin through here real quick, but kind of covered them in detail before. So, any questions at all on that?
Yeah, so to summarize, the budget that was approved was a $350,000 deficit. We're now saying it needs to be 355. After, checking everything from the salaries and benefit side and going that route.
Does anyone have any?
Such a huge variance. Wow.
I know, that was a big one. It's a big one.
One of the questions I had goes back to, what was it now? The special ed.
Yep.
Why are local school districts required to pay the taxpayers based upon the fact that we don't know what students, if we just get students that require more services,
Yep.
The local taxpayers pay more? Should it not be the state's responsibility?
Well, there is an exemption for students that cost over 35,000. What is that?
I think that might be the.
I think it's a cost over 35,000. Historically, we have not pursued it, largely due to administrative. It takes a lot to get that paperwork through, and it takes a lot of time. But we are pursuing that for the first time this year. We have a couple of students that are going to qualify for that exemption. But it takes a lot to get up to 35,000. So that typically is our students that are off campus or receiving extensive services, right?
Because you have to subtract anything you get from Medicaid, you have to, all the regular costs are not allowed.
Yep.
You can't partial out
Yep.
certain parts of it, it's very complicated.
It becomes a percentage of usage of employees, like it's a huge undertaking. So we are looking into that for the first time. I would not expect a huge difference, you know, in that. And if anything that we get back from that would just be on top of what we're already budgeted.
And in the past, we have done that, but there are almost always students that are out of
Yep.
district.
Yep.
And the only other types of students that usually it is the high medical
Yes.
need students that have additional costs for it.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, Kim, you're a great person to explain why some districts, even though on paper it would make sense,
it doesn't always make us.
it doesn't always make sense.
Because of
Yep.
all the calculations and breaking everything down.
Yep.
And
It's complex.
there are bigger schools that hire someone.
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
to
that
work
just does
just
it.
with
That's
that
their
one
only job.
component. For smaller districts, I know it's much more of a difficult challenge. There's just not
Yes.
enough time to do it. And you can be denied, from my
Well, yeah,
understanding.
and it's
as
still
well.
based on how many people apply for it.
Correct.
So how much you get back depends on how many people apply for it. So you can do all that work and end up getting
Yep.
$10,000. And
Right.
so as you've put more money into the work than you did into the money that you have.
Yep. So,
Goes back to
would be-
the idea, goes back to the idea that the state needs to take responsibility, not the local taxpayers.
100%.
They need to get back to the 60% that was legislated, or get back to, they never were there. They never have been there, but get to that percent that was legislated and they've
Yep.
never done it.
So just following what the law that they created would be nice.
Yeah, that would be
The
great.
60%.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even in the last cycle, they said with the surplus that they were going to significantly raise that amount, and they raised it 2%.
2%. Yep.
So that's.
2% in the first year, that number goes down because the money stays the same and their costs always go up. So it'll be 2%, you know, it was 2% on last year's reported. This year, I fully expect it to be back down to 31, somewhere around there, because your costs go up and their dollar amount stay the same.
So that's another conversation that anyone who feels like it could speak to our legislators about.
Yep.
That topic, as well as, once again, involved with the voucher topic, because if they can't provide services, then you don't have to accept a student in the voucher program that has higher financial needs.
Yep.
Which doesn't make sense either.
Any other questions?
You mentioned 35,000 as that threshold. What does it cost to teach an average student in Viroqua?
Right now, we're at that $11,000 threshold. Yep.
We're 3 times average. Wow.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Appreciate your answers.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve 24-25 budget.
Is there a second? Second. Great. Any more discussion? All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Robert.
Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Dana.
Bye, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Are we still being?